Hello, everybody. My name is Yaman, and I provide daily updates on Tesla, markets, and strategy. Let's get started. Markets are flat today. Across the board, Russell 2000 is up 1%. Oil prices are down 2%. You can see the big drop here. And the yield curve has steepened. 5-year Treasury yield is down 4 basis points. 30-year Treasury yield is up 3 basis points. Durable goods orders ex transportation came in higher than expected for July. Housing prices were slightly lower than expected, and consumer confidence was higher than expected today. Let's go into the article. It's going to be a long episode today, so settle in, sit back, and enjoy. Wall Street subdued as Trump attacks Fed again. Nvidia results in focus. Wall Street's main indices were flat on Tuesday, constrained by a rise in Treasury bond yields as President Donald Trump's decision to fire a central bank governor deepened concerns about the Fed's independence. Investors also awaited Nvidia's results and a key inflation report later this week for more insight on AI and interest rate cuts, the two big themes behind recent market gains. Earlier in the session, futures dropped after Trump said he was removing Fed Governor Lisa Cook over alleged improprieties in obtaining mortgage loans, prompting investor unease about what it could mean also mean for the outlook on monetary policy just weeks ahead of central bank's meeting. The uncertainty was evident as longer-dated treasury bonds and the dollar remained under pressure. Trump's action is likely to face legal challenges, but if successful, it would let him nominate a new member to the Fed's board at a time when he has called for lower interest rates. We've actually been pretty impressed by how the market has absorbed this one. I still have confidence that the Fed's going to operate independently regardless of the Trump administration, said Mark Hackett, chief market strategist at Nationwide. Despite lingering inflation pressures, traders have been pricing in a 25 basis point interest rate cut for September, encouraged by dovish signals from Fed Chair Jerome Powell, data pointing to labor market weakness and a shake-up at the central bank. Morgan Stanley became the latest brokerage to forecast an interest rate cut in September, but key upcoming inflation and jobs reports could prompt investors to reassess expectations. Nvidia's results on Wednesday will be a major catalyst for U.S. stocks that have rallied over the past few years on potential earnings growth from AI. The AI enthusiasm has also pushed up valuations of Wall Street's benchmark S&P 500 to above long-term averages, heightening the risk of a sell-off in case the chip giant falls short of market expectations. AMD gained 1.4% after Truist Securities upgraded the chip stock to buy from hold. Eli Lilly rose 4% after the drug maker said its experimental pill cuts body weight by 10.5% in diabetes patients. EchoStar jumped 77% after telecom giant AT&T said it has agreed to buy certain wireless spectrum licenses from the satellite communications firm for about $23 billion. All right, let's go into NVIDIA. NVIDIA results to spotlight fallout of China-US trade war. NVIDIA's business in China will be the focus of investors when the AI chip maker reports earnings on Wednesday, following an unusual deal with Trump administration and Beijing's subsequent efforts to stall imports. Caught in the crossfires of Washington and Beijing's ongoing trade war, the fate of NVIDIA's China business hangs on where the world's two largest economies land on tariff talks and chip trade curbs. The AI chip pioneer recently agreed to pay the US federal government 15% of its sales in Made in China in exchange for export licenses, a move that has drawn bipartisan criticism. Beijing, despite huge appetite for NVIDIA's chips in China, has urged domestic companies to limit purchases over apparent security concerns. Reports have emerged that NVIDIA has told some suppliers to suspend production of its China special H20 chips, but Reuters has reported that NVIDIA is developing a new and more powerful chip for China. We've got to get clarity on these two governments first and whether China wants chips and whether the administration is going to allow it, said Jamie Myers, senior analyst at NVIDIA shareholder Laffer Tangler Investments. And if so, how is that going to work? Last year, China accounted for 13% of NVIDIA's revenue. For the second quarter ended July 2025, many analysts did not factor in any revenue from H20 sales in that country, given that US approval came late in the quarter, while China's pushback complicates forecast calculations for the year. In May, Nvidia had said the curbs would shave off $8 billion in sales from the July quarter. The curbs led to a $4.5 billion charge in the previous 3-month period. Overall, the company is expected to report that second quarter revenue jumped 53% to $46.02 billion, according to LSEG data, a far cry from the triple-digit growth it witnessed for many quarters. But the analysts said the overall AI chip business is booming, with strong demand pouring in from tech giants such as Meta and Microsoft, who have expanded their capital budgets. Still, the positive commentary on demand from CEO Jensen Huang could boost AI stocks that have sold off recently on worries that investors may be valuing them too highly. Nvidia shares have gained more than a third so far in 2025, a smaller gain for the period than the previous 2 years. This still outpaces a more than 15% gain on the broader chip index and the benchmark S&P 500 indices near 10% year-to-date rise. For the third quarter, analysts expect Nvidia to guide to revenue of $52.96 billion, up 51% year over year. About $6 billion of that could come from China, analysts from Piper Sandler had estimated, with further growth at a 12 to 15% rate. But Nvidia could take a 5 to 5 percentage point hit to gross margins on China-bound chips due to the federal deal, with Bernstein analysts estimating it cutting about 1 point from Nvidia's overall margins. The company's adjusted gross margin is expected to drop nearly 4 percentage points to 72.1% in the second quarter. In the October quarter, gross margin is expected to contract by nearly 2 points to 73.2%. Next, after falling behind in generative AI, IBM and AMD look to quantum for an edge. We're just going to read the summary on this one. AST Space Mobile saw a 9% increase in share price due to plans to launch 60 satellites by 2026. The company aims to provide continuous services in US, Europe, Japan. No, that's different. All right, we're going to skip this one. Sorry about that. Norwegian wealth fund ditches Caterpillar over Israel's bulldozer use. Norway's sovereign wealth fund, the world's largest, is selling shares of Caterpillar. The reason has nothing to do with profit or cash flow, but the war in Gaza. This is, I think, underestimated theme in the world, especially in the investment world. I think there's some divestment going on from due to this topic. The fund said there was a risk in the U.S. machinery company that contributed to suffering in Palestinian territories, citing evidence Israeli authorities used its bulldozers to destroy property unlawfully. It is ditching its stakes in 4 Israeli banks, including the country's 2 largest assets, on similar grounds. The divestments by Norges Bank Investment Management add to evidence that the war in Gaza is leading to Israel's estrangement from Western allies. The fund manages almost $2 trillion in stocks, bonds, and other assets accumulated from Norway's oil wealth, giving it an average stake of 1.5% in all listed companies globally. Run by a former hedge fund manager, it has a muscular approach to investing, often pushing for changes at companies it owns or selling shares on environmental, social, and corporate governance grounds. Norway's fund held a stake of just over 1.2% in Caterpillar, valued at the equivalent of $2.4 billion at the end of 2024. Caterpillar didn't respond to a request for comment. The office of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu declined to comment. Earlier this month, the fund said it would sell 11 of the 61 Israeli companies in which it owns shares after a request by Norway's finance ministry to review its investments in the country. The order followed a political outcry over reports that the fund had bought shares of an engine company that maintains Israeli jet fighters. Israel's growing isolation in the international community and within parts of the business community is a serious problem, said Yohanan Plesner, a former member of the Knesset, who is president of the Israel Democracy Institute, a think tank. He notes, however, that thus far, Israel's economy hasn't been hit by divestment moves. Investment in Israel by Norway's oil fund had become a flashpoint ahead of elections due to take place next month. Labour Party, which faced a stiff challenge from the right-wing opposition, relies on support from smaller parties to govern with a minority of parliamentary seats. Some left-wing politicians have pushed the fund to divest from Israel or for chief executive to resign. Nikolai. All right. Next, Apple. A couple of Apple news. Apple internally discussed buying Mistral, Perplexity, the information reports. Apple has held talks internally about acquiring French AI startup Mistral, as well as Perplexity, the information reported on Tuesday, citing people familiar with the matter. Apple has trailed rivals such as Google and Samsung in terms of rollout of AI features in its devices. CEO Tim Cook signaled last month that Apple was open to larger AI-related acquisitions to accelerate its roadmap, a shift from its historically conservative M&A posture. NVIDIA-backed Mistral was valued at more than $6 billion after its Series B funding round last year, and Financial Times reported this month that the French company was in talks to raise $1 billion at a valuation of $10 billion. Executives at the iPhone maker have held internal talks about potentially bidding for NVIDIA, and Jeff Bezos-backed Perplexity, Bloomberg News reported earlier this year. And Apple is holding its iPhone 17 event on September 9. Apple said today that it's holding its event on iPhone 17 on Tuesday, September 9, just like last year. The company has started sending invites for the event, which will be held at the Steve Jobs Theater in Cupertino and will start at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. While the company is expected to release one regular and two Pro phones, it could replace the Plus with a new and slim iPhone 17 Air model. The device could reportedly have a thickness of 5.5 millimeters with a 6.6-inch screen. This would make the new iPhone 17 Air 0.08 inches thinner than the current gen models. The base iPhone 17 is reported to have a new and bigger 6.3-inch screen with a 120 Hz refresh rate instead of 60 Hz in previous years. Along with the iPhones, Apple will likely have updated the Apple Watch Series 11, Ultra 3, and SE 3. The Apple Watch Ultra 3 would be a notable update amid the trio with a bigger screen and faster charging support. The company might also announce AirPods Pro 3, 3 years after the previous generation of Pro AirPods were released. The new buds will have a more compact design, a new chip for better noise cancellation and audio processing, and touch-sensitive controls. I'll probably get that one. Wall Street ramps up September rate cut bets after Powell's dovish tone. So let's switch to Fed, and now we have a few company-specific in the automotive industry, and then we're going to finish with that. Morgan Stanley became the latest brokerage to forecast a cut in interest rates in September, joining global peers after Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell hinted at policy easing next month. Deutsche Bank, BNP Paribas, and Barclays pulled forward their rate cut forecasts to September after Powell emphasized increasing risks to the labor market at the Jackson Hole Economic Symposium on Friday. We continue to believe that monetary policy must be forward-looking and consider lags in its effects on the economy, Powell said, adding that the Fed must balance risks to both its job and inflation mandates when setting policy. Last month, the U.S. Central Bank held interest rates steady, maintained its projection for 2 cuts this year, and slightly dialed back its outlook to just 125 basis point cut in 2026 and 2027. Traders are now pricing in an 82% chance of a September cut, according to LSEG data. The rate setting FOMC is set to meet September 16 and 17. So total cuts, Citigroup 75 basis points, Wells Fargo, Goldman 75. Macquarie 50, JP Morgan 75, Barclays 50, Nomura 50, Morgan Stanley 50, Deutsche 50, BofA. So this is the Bank of America Global Research Team. They've had this zero cut forecast for a while, and they still haven't changed it, which is interesting. They really stand out among their peers with that call. UBS 100 basis points, BNP Paribas 50, HSBC 50, UBS Global Wealth Management 100 basis points. Okay. Interesting. Fed still on track for September rate cut after Trump's move on Cook. I think we covered this already, so skip that one. This is an opinion piece about Fed's independence. Let's talk about that. Remaking the Fed in his image, why Trump could take further control of the central bank in February, by Ben Werschkel. President Trump's Monday move to try to fire Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook appears set to launch a dramatic fight in the weeks ahead as the president tries to install a fourth ally on the central bank's core board of governors. But looming soon after is a deadline early next year that is increasingly in focus, when implications of this coming fight could be even more impactful. That's because, as Federal Reserve rule states, the 5-year terms of a larger cast of Fed regional presidents expire at the end of next February, and they need to be renewed for the officials to stay in their seats. These 12 presidents are independently appointed. They haven't reached mandatory retirement age and are expected to try to stay. But crucially, they are subject to final approval by the rapidly transforming Board of Governors in Washington. Put another way, if Trump's move this week to remove Cook is successful, it could give the president 4 allies, a majority of the 7-member board, who are in line with his vision of immediately lowering interest rates as well as holding potential leverage over regional presidents. Quote, "This is a high drama and there's a lot at stake for the Fed," end quote. John Hilsenrath, a StoneX senior advisor, said Tuesday morning on Yahoo Finance, noting that if the president gets a majority of allied governors, then all of a sudden the president has remade the Fed in his image. Regional presidents serve 5-year terms, which expire at the end of February in years ending in a 1 or 6, meaning Trump didn't have such an opportunity during his first term, as he came into office in 2017 and left office 4 years later in January 2021. In a recent analysis for the Brookings Institution, senior fellow David Wessel noted that the Trump majority of the Board of Governors could even go further and may have the authority to dismiss a regional president at pleasure, though the law is far from clear and has never been tested. Federal Reserve presidents are influential because they sit atop their regional banks and set policy there. Perhaps most importantly, in Trump's view, they also cast votes at the FOMC meetings in Washington, where interest rate levels are decided. In total, 12 voting members decide the path of interest rates every 6 weeks. The 7 Board of Governors and the President of the Federal Reserve Bank of New York have permanent voting seats, and now 4 of the remaining 11 regional presidents have votes on a rotating basis. Another opinion piece, Trump's war on the Federal Reserve will backfire, by Rick Newman. President Trump obviously wants to control the Federal Reserve's monetary policymaking. If he ever does gain control of the Fed, it could endanger the Trump economy, throw markets into a tailspin, and leave Trump economic legacy in the basement alongside that of George W. Bush and Herbert Hoover. Trump's latest Fed attack is a threat to fire Lisa Cook, one of 12 voting members on the Fed committee that sets interest rates. Trump wants to install loyalists at the Fed who will slash rates and do whatever else he wants. Cook is a Biden appointee who, like Fed Chair Jerome Powell, has voted this year to keep rates steady. Most economists think that the Fed has been right to sit tight on rates. Trump clearly disagrees. Trump thinks he found leverage over Cook because his top housing regulator, Bill Pulte, scoured millions of individual housing records looking for dirt and found that Cook declared 2 different properties as her primary residence when applying for bank loans. Trump claims that that gives him the authority to fire Cook. But there's no formal charge against Cook, just a Trump Pulte smear. Cook said she's staying in her job and will fully defend herself. Trump has not yet actually moved to fire Cook. He has only said he will do it. So Trump might be floating a trial balloon to see how markets react. But his plan to gain control of the Fed is self-evident. He has repeatedly pressured Powell to resign while nominating loyalist Stephen Miran to the rate-setting committee when Adriana Kugler unexpectedly stepped down in early August. Trump's broader plan may be to seed the rate-setting committee with friendly members by early next year, when the Fed must select the 12 presidents of the Federal Reserve banks, normally an uncontroversial process. Fed watchers are now debating whether Trump can actually pull enough strings to populate the rate-setting committee with a majority of allies willing to do his bidding. But there's no debate over how disruptive it would be if Trump pulled it off. Trump's efforts to bend the Fed to his will are a genuine threat to US markets, Capital Economics explained in an August 26 analysis. Quote, prolonged attacks risk pushing up long term bond yields while weighing on the value of the dollar and potentially equity prices, end quote. Markets have already registered a negative reaction. Long term interest rates rose slightly on the news of Trump's plan to fire Cook, while the value of the dollar dipped. Those moves indicate greater worry about inflation due to bad Fed decision making. The moves were modest, but that they may be partly because Cook hasn't left and the Fed, for now, remains independent. Interesting. More on Trump. Trump family crypto empire expands with Crypto.com partnership. President Trump's personal crypto ventures are expanding again, this time with plans for a digital asset treasury company that holds an alternative cryptocurrency. Trump Media and Technology Group, which operates the Truth social media platform, announced Tuesday that it was partnering with the cryptocurrency exchange Crypto.com to form a company that holds CRO, a token created by Crypto.com. A blind check company tied to Yorkville Advisors is another co-founder of the new firm called Trump Media CRO Strategy. Trump Media said it plans to purchase $105 million worth of CRO. Yorkville said the total expected funding for the company's treasury will be $1 billion worth of CRO, or about 19% of the token's market cap, plus $420 million in cash and equivalents, and as a $5 billion line of credit. The announcement is part of the hottest trend in crypto, in which a wide variety of companies, many with no obvious ties to the world of digital assets, have made buying and holding cryptocurrency a primary part of their business plan. The model is based on MicroStrategy, a tech firm that first started buying Bitcoin in 2020 and has seen its stock price soar. Companies of all sizes and sectors are strategically planning for the future by establishing digital asset treasuries anchored by assets that have created comprehensive value proposition and are poised for greater utility. Devin Nunes, the chairman and CEO of Trump Media, said in a statement. Trump Media said it plans to introduce a reward system on Truth Social that uses Crypto.com digital wallet infrastructure. CRO saw its price jump Tuesday morning by about 30% to 21 cents a token. It's still far from its all-time high of nearly 97 cents a token that it hit in 2021. Since taking office, the Trump administration has pushed for crypto-friendly regulations and laws, while the Trump family has aggressively sought to expand its crypto-related businesses. That unprecedented dynamic has led to allegations of corruption from Democrats, though the president says he has entrusted the management of his business dealings to his sons. In May, Trump rewarded top investors in his meme coin with a swanky dinner. Trump launched a coin just days before taking office. Fans of the president have also been able to buy crypto-themed Trump merchandise, including $100,000 watches and pricey sneakers. Trump Media previously announced plans to hold a significant amount of Bitcoin on its books, as well as to create an exchange-traded fund tied to the price of 5 popular cryptocurrencies. All right. Now, a few automotive news. Thank you, Earl, for reposting the stream. All right, GM's $1 billion bet on the Formula One rolls on with star driving pairing for Cadillac team. We've invested heavily, GM President Mark Roos says, of the Cadillac F1 effort, with new drivers, Valtteri Bottas and Sergio Perez joining next year. GM's Cadillac Formula One team unveiled its driving pairing for the 2026 season when the big three automakers' big bet on F1 begins. We're going to leave that one there, and then we're going to go to BYD. This is Stellantis and then BYD. Stellantis shelves Level 3 driver assistance program as it downscales software ambitions, sources say. Stellantis has shelved its first Level 3 advanced driver assistance program because of high costs, technological challenges, and concerns about consumer appetite, 3 people familiar with the matter told Reuters. As recently as February, Stellantis said its in-house system, which is part of the AutoDrive program, was ready for deployment and a key player of its strategy. The company said the system, which enables drivers to have their hands off the wheel and eyes off the road under certain conditions, will allow them to temporarily watch movies, catch up on emails, or read books. The Level 3 software was never launched, the company confirmed to Reuters, but it stopped short of saying that the program was canceled. Quote, what was unveiled in February 2025 was Level 3 technology for which there is currently limited market demand. So this has not been launched, but the technology is available and ready to be deployed, end quote, a Stellantis spokesperson said. Three sources, however, said that the program was put on ice and is not expected to be deployed. When asked how much time and money was lost on the initiative, Stellantis declined to say, responding that the work done on AutoDrive will help support its future versions. All right. Now, BYD. BYD avoids EU tariffs by exporting EVs from Thailand plant. BYD has started shipping Thai-made vehicles to Europe, avoiding EU tariffs on China-made EVs. The Rayong-based CKD factory, BYD's first fully owned passenger car plant outside of China, has an annual production capacity of 150,000 vehicles. This export marks a significant step in BYD's globalization strategy and Thailand's role in the global EV supply chain. Interesting. So, I think the most important part here is BYD's first fully owned passenger car plant outside of China. Okay, so BYD has achieved the milestones that it has so far, the leader in EV production, and I think one of the top 5 automakers in the world now, including their hybrids, with just plants in China. So let's read this actually. This is, pretty impressive what they have achieved. China's BYD has started shipping Thai-made vehicles to Europe for the first time. Over 900 units of BYD Dolphin set sail to Germany, Belgium, and the UK, the company announced on Monday. The first batch of Dolphins left Thailand aboard BYD's own vessel, BYD Zhengzhou. This is the first time Zhengzhou has sailed from Thailand to Europe. The Rayong-based CKD factory, which began operations in July 2024, is BYD's first fully owned passenger car plant outside of China. With an annual production capacity of 150,000 vehicles, this site serves both the local Thai market and the overseas exports. So in 1 year, they started exporting from that factory. Completely knocked down refers to a method where the vehicle is shipped in parts, Tesla does this too, and assembled in the destination country. Automakers use CKD kits to reduce import tariffs and support local manufacturing. In July, the Thai plant reached 90,000 delivery milestone a year after it went into operation. Following the delivery of our 90,000th NEV in July, we're once again achieving a breakthrough. The export of Thai-made Dolphin models to Europe for the first time not only represents another step forward in BYD's globalization strategy, but also underscores Thailand's vital role in the global EV supply chain, said General Manager of BYD Thailand. China-made EVs face anti-subsidy tariffs imposed by the EU last year. As BYD was cooperating with the investigation, they faced a lower additional tariff of 20.7% on top of the existing 10% customs duty. BYD sold 545,000 EVs overseas in the first 7 months of the year. That is 133.5% up from the same period last year. In total, BYD sold 2.5 million passenger vehicles globally in the first 7 months of the year, up 26% from the same period last year, according to data monitored by China EV Data Tracker. However, their growth is slowing down, as in July, the company sold 341,000 passenger vehicles, only up 0.1% year over year, and the lowest year over year growth in 1.5 years. One more, BYD plans to build local assembly plant in Malaysia. So we've been talking for several months now that BYD is getting serious about manufacturing globally, and this is yet another factory. On August 22, 2025, BYD held a launch event in Malaysia for the new BYD Seal sedan model, while also announcing plans to build a CKD, complete knockdown factory, scheduled to begin operations in 2026. On the same day, the company opened its 36th Win Hin store, bringing the combined number of BYD and Denza outlets in Malaysia to 43. The twin milestones mark not only a significant step in BYD's expansion in Malaysia, but also a clear demonstration of its commitment to combining global reach with local integration. Okay. And apparently BYD is the most popular car maker for, I think, 3 years in a row. All right. And BYD is not the only one. The first batch of Leapmotor B10 crossovers was shipped to Europe. The first batch of Leapmotor B10 electric crossovers has been shipped to Europe ahead of its September 8th sales launch. The B10, priced at 29,900 euros, will be sold in 20 countries across Europe, the Middle East, Asia, Africa, South America by the end of 2025. Leapmotor, partly acquired by Stellantis in 2024, aims to boost its overseas sales with this model, complementing its existing T03 hatchback and C10 crossover. So competition in the EV front is continuing to heat up across the world. On that note, thank you again, Earl, for reposting this stream, and thank you, everybody. I will chat with you all next time. Take care.